Welcome back to NoobAquatics. I am Matthew. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. And remember, if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. And if this video is to your liking and you like it, make sure you like, leave comments if you'd like. We'd be happy to answer any of your comments. Today, our video is about natural aquariums. So the main question is, to water change or not to water change? This has been the rave right now on the YouTube. People out there are telling you that it's ridiculous. You should do water changes. Or some are saying that you shouldn't do water changes. This is more of a personal choice. It's not a necessity. So the thing behind this is that a natural aquarium. So let's explain what that is. A natural aquarium is an aquarium that will take care of itself naturally. Now you got to take into account when you look at a natural aquarium, if you are going back to nature, then you have to think about the fish that you are keeping in the aquarium. The fish are the main thing to think of when you decide what you need to do, such as maintenance, such as water, cleaning, flow, aeration, that type of thing. That's the main thing you need to think of. You can't just throw a bunch of fish in there and just hope that they live and survive. I mean, your aquarium eventually will balance itself out and it will definitely keep itself stable. But some fish just do a lot better in different types of environments. So take for instance apistogrammas. Apistogrammas like blackwater tanks, and a lot of them like water that is low in minerals. Now, if you have a natural aquarium going and you never change the water, the mineral content in that water is going to skyrocket. Okay. Now, there are some fish that love those minerals, such as guppies, live bearers, or even some, other fish out there that need the minerals to survive. Like certain types of shrimp are going to need minerals, and then other types of shrimp do better with no minerals. So water changing is a preference of the fish, not a choice of the aquarist. What is something that I agree with 100%? So a lot of people out there say that you should gravel vac. Now again, gravel vacuuming is done. It cleans the aquarium. It gets all the poop and stuff out of the base in the substrate. This is something that I do not do. Now, I don't gravel vac for a reason. I have a very deep substrate, so most of the substrates in our aquariums are anywhere between 3.5 to 5 inches deep. The reason is because on the very base layer, it's more of a dirt layer, and then at the top, it's a sand layer. This is one area where I agree with on Father Fish. You definitely need to have a deep substrate in your aquarium. Now, this is for those people that are trying to keep an aquarium that's natural. Why do I say that the substrate doesn't need to be cleaned? Because if you think about it in nature, who in the world out there in nature is cleaning the substrate? Nobody. And they have a very deep substrate out there. So if you go out to any riverbed and you look, there's not a, forest ranger out there using a gravel vac on the substrate inside the streams. Not at all. The streams, the substrate is not being agitated at all. So that substrate is staying there without any cleaning. And that is the one area where I think everybody should not touch. It builds up bacteria. It builds up little creatures in there to keep your fish alive. That area, in my opinion, if you have a deep substrate, should not be touched. Water, though, on the other hand, gets changed out in a lot of these streams all the time. So water just doesn't sit. Now in a pond, water sits. So if you have pond fish, you don't necessarily need to change the water because the water itself sits and percolates and the fish love it. If you have fish that are living in a stream that is of high flow, the water is changing constantly in there. So in a way, yes, for a tank like that, the substrate would be left alone, but the water needs to be changed out because they are constantly getting renewed with new water. Rainwater comes, and if you've ever tested rainwater, the mineral content in rainwater is really low, very low. So why are people telling others not to change the water? Well, that's, like I said, it's something that's happening, but you do. Some tanks you do. Our tanks, we don't clean the substrate at all, but we do change the water. So we look at the mineral count. Now, how do we do that? And I'll show you here. So in our tanks, we go back to nature, right? So we make sure our tanks are highly planted. The plants are what remove all the nitrates. The plants are what remove all the ammonia, the the toxins that build up there, and the plants will remove some of the mineral as well. Now this tank here has wild caught apistogrammas in there, and these wild caught apistogrammas come from water where the mineral count is low, so low in calcium, low in magnesium, that type of thing. And because of that, we have to keep track of the calcium and magnesium count in the tank, and there's a way to do that. So how do you do that? For us here, we test our water. So we test our water using test kits like this. So I test the calcium. Calcium is my indicator of whether or not I need to change water or not. If I test the calcium and the parts per million of the calcium is extremely high, then I know that when the eggs are laid by my apistos, by my female apistos, they will harden up and may not ever hatch. So I change the water. So that's how I determine when I need to be doing water changes. Now, some of my actual pencil fish are wild caught as well. So I have a lot of pencil fish in there, and they like really, really low mineral count as well. That's where they come from, is a low mineral count. So how do you keep a low mineral count without ever changing water? You can't, because we don't have rainwater. We don't have rainwater coming in. We don't have a flow from upstream coming in and replacing that water, just flushing it down all the way down and changing out the water constantly. All right. Yes, I don't have a high flow in here, but that's okay. They don't need a high flow. They just need clean water. The filters back there are mostly for biological filtration, so they hold bacteria and they keep that, but I don't ever clean them either. They stay back there dirty. My substrate, though, as you can see, here's my hand. You can see how deep my substrate is. All right, and you can see the base layer. You see, here's the layer where the dirt layer is, or volcanic ash. I have different stuff down here, but there's the base layer, and then I have a sand layer up here. This creates that anaerobic bacteria in there and the aerobic bacteria separation, so it helps reduce my nitrates in multiple ways. I don't ever clean the substrate. I have lots of plants. My shrimp tank here, I keep an eye on that as well. They like high levels of minerals because the shrimp need it for their shells. The shrimp need it for their casing, all of that. The eggs, they need high levels of minerals. So keep that in mind. So minerals are very important. And then I have assassin snails, but it's hard to tell what they really need. The plants themselves don't really do very well a lot in a high mineral count, but some of them do. So in this tank here, I have some subwaster ting back there. I don't know if you can see that. All right, this is the only tank that the subwaster ting loves to grow in. Why? I don't have no clue. It doesn't grow in any of my other ones. It only likes this tank. And this tank has a lot of plants. Okay. Deep substrate, deep substrate, deep substrate. Still waiting to add that substrate in there. So soon I will get that all cleaned up and add in a deep substrate. My killifish, now these are ditch fish, so these are back and forth. So killifish, some killifish are found in still streams, but what they do is they'll jump from stream to stream until they find a stream flowing full of water. Their eggs will be laid in one area. They'll jump, and then they'll find a mate and lay their eggs in another, but it's still flowing stream. So they like low mineral count too. But some can do great in high mineral count. And you'll see we just changed the water out after a month and a half because the mineral count was getting a little high, and he's chasing that female around to lay eggs again. They constantly lay eggs. I mean, you can see all the babies in there. All right, they got plenty of plants to lay it on. They like laying the eggs on the filter for some reason. But, yeah, they love it in there. That's because the TDS, again, we don't really worry about the TDS. The TDS is just an indicator that you need to check your mineral count. Do not base it solely on TDS. In here, I have shrimp. So I need to have a higher level of minerals in there. But once it gets too high, it could be dangerous for the shrimp. So where does it balance out at? When are you going to stop keeping it at that level? In here, I have baby fish that need to be growing at a steady rate. When you have baby fish in there, all right, You have to change the water out to keep the hormones out of the water so they grow at a steady rate, evenly. Same thing here. I have baby corridors in there, and I got to change out half the water every day just to make sure that they grow at a steady rate. So it's really, really important that the decision you make on natural aquariums being a personal choice is not done because you saw someone's video. It's not done because someone told you. I love Father Fish. Father Fish he's funny, he's great, he has many, many years of knowledge. So definitely use that knowledge, but use that knowledge to your advantage. He has learned from his mistakes. He has learned from what he does. Some of his tanks are doing really well without being touched. He's got that 20-year tank. Great tank. Okay? You can do something like that too. But to get there, you can't just throw a Wallstad tank and then a bunch of water in there and plants in there and never test it. You need to know what's going on in there and when it becomes a problem or not. And the only way to do that is to be vigilant of what your fish needs are. Not your tank needs, not your time needs, because the thing behind it is people are like, yeah, I can do that. I'll never change my water. I'll never vacuum my substrate. I'll never do anything like that. In my personal opinion, there are two things that need to be done to every aquarium. All right? You never gravel vac your substrate as long as you have a deep substrate. That deep substrate right there is what's going to absorb all that leftover food waste. It's going to break down into mulm and turn into basically dirt in the substrate. That's actually beneficial for your aquarium because it'll feed those little creatures in the substrate, which will give your baby fish, if you're hatching out baby fish in your tank, something to eat. And then the other thing is clean the front glass. Why? Because you need to be able to see in your aquarium. We don't really clean the sides. We don't clean the back because we have narite snails that need to eat. We have other types of snails that need to eat. We have baby fish in there that need to eat. So we don't really clean the glass except for the front because we want to be able to see in, right? So those are the two things I think that need to be done. Water changes, again, are done as needed basis. You can take a tank and you can change your water every month. You can change your water every week. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do a 80% water change, a 10% water change, a 5% water change. Again, the percentage doesn't matter. That's a choice you need to make. But it should all be based around, if you're going into the natural aquarium, it should be based around the fish you keep, not the advice you get from another fish keeper. The fish you keep are the most important part because as aquarists, we are here to make sure our fish are healthy. We are here to make sure our fish stay alive, and we are here to make sure that our fish stay comfortable. Okay? You can't just go off and start treating your fish tank the way you want to. This is my opinion, again. You can go off and you can, not change the water, but think about it. Do you really want to do that and take the chance of having too many minerals in there that could actually harm your fish? And in nature, is that what nature does? Does it never rain and it never replace the water? Does it never add new water to anything? Even ponds get new water sometimes. All right? When it rains and the pond fills up, does the pond stay full or does the pond eventually go back down to its normal depth? Water evaporates, all right? And the levels will balance themselves out. Why? Because it's receiving new water all the time. Lakes, rivers, always getting new water. They get runoff. They get new minerals brought in. Most stagnant ponds get new water too. It rains. They get new water. So it is very important that you monitor the water quality by actually getting the proper test kits. For me, I test with calcium. For me, I test my GH because I need to know if my magnesium and calcium levels are elevated because the GH test kit tests for calcium and magnesium levels. But there are other things that you need to consider. Food. Everything that you put in for food increases all right, increases the mineral count. TDS is just a device that you can use to determine if you need to test the minerals in your water. A lot of fish eggs, if they have too much high levels of calcium in fresh water, will not hatch because there's just too much calcium in the water hardening the egg. That's why a lot of times for certain fish, they say you got to have TDS that is extremely low. Well, it's not the TDS, it's the calcium, the magnesium, the stuff that actually hardens those eggshells. That's what needs to be low. Discus, certain types of wild caught fish, that type of thing. The reason the water needs to stay pristine clean is because the eggs need to hatch. If you actually watch the video of discus and the areas they live, the water is not clean. I watched the video just yesterday of the area where discus live, and that water was dirtier than any tank I keep in this house. But it is runoff water, which means there's a good chance it's all new water. It's just rustling up the dirt, all right? And it's very dirty, but it probably doesn't have a high level of calcium, magnesium, and those things that harden the shells of eggs. And because of that, they hatch really easy. But the cleanliness, that water was dirty. And I'm sure any of you people out there that have actually went out and captured fish have noticed the water isn't very clean in a lot of these places. But then there are some places where the water is pristine clean. You can see all the way to the bottom. In those areas, you can't get that by never changing the water. The water is constantly flowing in there with new water. So the question is, do you water change or do you not water change? In my personal opinion, we water change. We just don't water change that often. So like I said, we just did a water change. And for the tanks that needed it, we drip acclimated the water we added back. So we lowered our calcium content by 50% in those tanks that needed to have it lowered. And we drip acclimated the water into the tank. So same thing with rain. Rain fills in slowly over time and pushes out the old water. A stream that's constantly flowing in, for those types of fish, they need more water changes. So keep track of what your fish need. You don't have to clean the substrate if you got a deep substrate. This is not for those out there that are commercial breeders and that type of thing that have no substrate in their tanks. This is for normal aquarium hobbyists that keep a tank that is planted, that has substrate, that has lighting, that type of thing, and you want to go back to nature. When you go back to nature, make sure it's all about the fish and not about your personal opinion. Keep track of what your fish like. That's what we say here at NoobAquatics. If your fish like low minerals, change the water out every now and then so you can keep the minerals low in your tank for that fish. If your fish like high minerals, like our Neocaridina shrimp that we're going to be replacing out with something different, if they like high minerals, then keep it a little bit higher, but always keep track of what your mineral count is. That type of thing. Again, this is just a video on our opinion with the water change or no water change. Can you do it? Absolutely, you can. Do you have to do it? No, you don't. It's a choice. And you need to, as a fish keeper, make that choice and determination based on the fish you keep and the advice you get from professional aquarists. Don't just take that advice just because they say it. Take the advice, research the fish, find out where the fish live, what they need with their water, and then follow the advice, educated advice, that you have determined based on the fish you keep. Hopefully this helped out in helping you determine a decision on whether or not you should do water changes. Because we do. We just don't do them that often. But we never clean our substrates because in nature, nobody's out there with a gravel vac cleaning the substrate. In fact, I bet if I went down to my local stream that's constantly flowing with water with fish in it, and I asked the local, forest ranger, and I say, hey, do you ever go out there and gravel vac? He's going to be like, what's a gravel vac? And I'm going to be like, oh, so you never go out there and clean the substrate. He's like, that substrate is all natural and no one ever touches it except for the people that walk through it. But again, the substrate is not clean, and that's how you should treat it. Don't touch the substrate, but think about the water that comes in and comes out in nature for the fish you keep. Well, thank you so much for coming to NoobAquatics. If this video helped you out and helped you to make that decision or determination on what you should do, make that personal choice based on education of your fish, and that's how it should go. Well, thanks again. Remember to subscribe and like. and you have a wonderful fishy day.